Hey everyone, welcome to Super Art Power Hour. Hey, tick, 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 tick. I'm excited to share some fundamentals of weapon design for Valorant. I'm a senior concept artist at the Valorant Premium Content team. I'm working on skin lines last 6 years. Most famous skin lines and thematics, and I started in 2019, and we started with the Elderflame, and Prime, Oni, Xena Hunter, Ruination, Prelude to Chaos, and many different skin lines. But my favorite one still, it is the Champions. It's a big challenge for me as an artist, and it's always been a big challenge for me as a professional. When I worked on the Champs 2024, I thought we need to tell a story of players. Your story is a lot of ups and downs, and I needed to explain that in the design. And one moment I found that it's actually line graph, which shows all your history, all your ups and downs, and we can see it here. And on the 1P, we can see it a little bit cleaner. It's all your ups and downs. In the center, we have a rose, and after 24 kills, it fully opens and releases the diamond inside, which creates a light which goes straight, moving you to the championship, because it's like a representation of your journey, when all your ups and downs, and then you start blooming, you're becoming a champion, you're here. It's a small story which I try to tell. If you want to find that story, you can find it, but it doesn't mean it should be obvious for everyone. The first thing in this design, it's a champion's design, but not the story itself. The brand is number one, the story is number two. That's why I'm always trying to make my designs simple, but with some philosophy inside, which is not so obvious, but if you want, you can always find that story inside. The last thing is the effects for the melee, my favorite one, because it's actually Korea, and that's across, it's a place where a seal is, and that lines, it's actually lines of the Korean art. They have specific style of the tigers drawings, and they look so cool, so unique, and I wanted to show it in the VFXs. I want to represent how many layers this thing has, and how many time we're spending just to bring that small stories in our weapon design. As a concept artist, I'm mostly trying to think about the next steps, what the 3D art team will do, and how to help the 3D team, then to the animators and VFXers. Every time when I'm designing something, I need to keep it in mind, and just to make a room for their creativity, because I'm not one person who's kind of dictate the rules in that team. I'm just a person who's creating the base idea and creating a canvas for the rest of the team. But my major role is just find the idea and represent that idea visually. I'm gonna work on the new thematic, and I'm gonna share my process, which contains approximately the same steps I'm passing through every day. The first one, it's research, when you're trying to find a lot of references. The second one is some initial sketches. The next one is refining these sketches, and then we getting the final render. But that wouldn't be shit, it's just a representation of our work process. As my theme right now, it is ancient mythology, and I thought what might be the best representation of the ancient mythology, and there are so many cool stories, so many regions, so many good legends behind that. And we start thinking the most classic one, why not to use Greek mythology. And I thought the major god of the Greek mythology, it is Zeus, and I start thinking what I can do and how that might look like in a weapon design. Every time when we're working on the skin lines, we have to keep in mind a lot of different things, because we have a lot of limitations and restrictions. It's pretty difficult because the Valorant, it is a high competitive video game, and we need to take care about our players and every detail which might distract you from the game. That's why every time when we're working on something like that, we're thinking about so many things at the same time. In our briefs, we have couple words, if it's not like champions or something like a big brand with already existed guidelines, like specific colors, just being consistent in this brand. Most of the time we are trying to generate a lot of ideas and a lot of directions for the thematic. For example, if we're using like ancient mythology and Zeus as a god, we can move that thematic to the future or to the past. Just imagine we found that gun, it was made by like some sentinels or like some cyclops in the ancient time, or that might be in the future. And we have like God's power in our weapon which locked in the gun. And actually our gun, it's not just a gun, it is like a small laboratory or like a facility which creates like thunderbolts. Okay, let's go. I'm gonna working on the Wacom Cintiq. As a software, I'm gonna use the Photoshop. It's much easier for line drawings, but it's not necessary. Before drawing a logo or something like that, you need to plan what you're gonna say in this logo. You need to find a clean and simple message. That's what I'm trying to do every time before start drawing. And as my theme right now is like ancient mythology, and Zeus is the main character. I need to find the best visual representation of the Zeus. What might be represent him like the best as a god or as a power. The story of the Zeus says a lot. There's a god who has like thunderbolts as the weapons, and that might be a cool story which we can tell in the design. First thing, when I'm doing my research, I'm trying to find the best visual explanation of the idea. And when I'm thinking about Zeus, I'm thinking about like what the sign might be, what the image might represent him. And again, as a graphic designer, I'm start thinking about his name. And if we write his name and look at that letters and understand how they visually look like. Actually, the name itself, for me, says, okay, the first letter in his name looks like a thunderbolt. Why not to use it? And the last letter, that's actually, it's another thunderbolt. Might be a really good sign, which I can use for the part of the storytelling. It's always about proportions. And proportions dictate the rest of the parts of your gun. And here I have two guns. I have Vandal and Phantom. And both of them have their own features, and we can recognize them pretty easy, especially like on the 3D view, like on the third person view or like side view, we can see like a lot of stuff. We can identify this is the Vandal, and actually it's a banana mag. It's the biggest part. Second, the gas tube, and the third, it's actually the rear side. The rest of might be changed and no one notices it. For the Phantom, it's pretty straight gun with another straight line on the center. The stock doesn't say anything for us. Everything we need is just the center of this image. The second elements of the reading, it's on the 1P, which we need to keep in mind. For the Vandal, inside, actually, it's a diamond, and it has a diamond shape in the center. For the Phantom, it's a rectangle. It's a number 1. Second, the back is pretty sleek. We can use these original parts as a part of our design. I'm gonna focus on right now on the Phantom. The first thing, what I'm gonna do, I'm just trying to find shoulder line. In the automotive design, they use this term just to understand, like they call it character line or shoulder line. You can find it in any car right on the shoulder side. It's pretty obvious, but that creates the most of the character. And the same thing I need to do here with the Phantom. I use the Thunderbolt as the best explanation of the Zeus power or like signature, how he might look like. So for that, I'm gonna use it. Like I need to try to find a flow of this line, something like that. I don't know. I'm just searching and trying to find where that might look good. Let's keep it maybe approximately here, is the main sign, as the main character line. Every time when we are working on that kind of designs or that kind of weapons or stories, we need to tell again the small story. And you can always find it in the different products around you, in the cars and like in the different physical objects. They're always trying to tell you some small story. And for example, the best example for me was a Kia with their tiger nose design. And that helped a lot because before that Kia didn't have any branding. And the guy who did it, it was Peter Schreier, as I remember, one of the biggest car designers. He found a really good idea. And in Southern Korea, they think their land looks like a tiger. And if you look at that, like their map looks like a tiger. And he tries to find a way how to represent a tiger in the car design. That's why he made a grill design as a tiger nose. It looked like that, which represents a tiger nose in their design. And it was a brilliant idea because it's a pretty simple, and the story is pretty simple, but it's so obvious and makes a really cool creature from the car. That's why we're using approximately the same approach. We're trying to find what might tell the story. And in my case, it'll be a Thunderbolt. So I need to keep in mind right now the shape of the gun, and trying to integrate that Thunderbolt to the body of the weapon. Another one thing what I'm doing, I'm always trying to find the bottom line or the bottom character line. It helped me out to find the right silhouette. If you look at the Phantom design, you can see the line which goes here and up, which create the strong line flow. And I really love it. And everything what I want, it's just trying to repeat the same flow what I have on the Thunderbolt, right on the silhouette of the stock. When we're thinking about the esport and all of these things, we need to find a way how to explain sport in every gun, how to bring that feeling of the dynamic in every gun. To say like the difference between the static and dynamic design, we can look at the two shapes. One of them might be like a box or like a rectangle. Another one, it's like a triangle. Both of them, they're like a standard objects, but one of them look like static object, another one look like dynamic object. Because the triangle has that slopes, we can easily understand the direction. Direction creates the dynamic, and everything we need is just bring that dynamic to the design. To help us out to make it, we will use the approach which calls like Kiki versus Booba. That was the old experiment in the 30s when the people, when they made that experiment, they showed two images. One of them it was like two bubbles, and gave two names, Kiki and Booba, and ask people what of the names of these objects, and people automatically understood like Booba, it's some soft object, Kiki, it's something more aggressive and more sharpened object. The same thing works on the silhouette all the time. If you want to make it like more Booba, you can make it like more slow and soft lines, make it like a less aggressive. For the Kiki, we need to make like a more dynamic, more straight lines. They're creating a lot of velocity in our design. I need to create dynamic, and for that, I already tilted the Thunderbolt a little bit just to create that direction. And right now, I need to support that direction. At first, I want to use again some lights which will repeat the Thunderbolt, and another one might be goes forward. And after that, I need to understand like what will be inside, and maybe there will be like some window, and we can see like some electric, I don't know, it's like, just imagine the whole gun, it's a high electric facility which generates a lot of energy. That will be a glass, and under that glass we can see like some mechanical elements inside and high voltage parts. Then I need to support that Thunderbolt with the different dynamic lines, and that might be because we already have this line on the trigger guard. We can support that line on the top, and it goes, for example, goes up. All lines, they have to go somewhere, and they have to create like a visual flow. Most of the time we are trying to make the most interesting parts on this side because it's the closest to the camera and less distorted by camera. As far that object is more distorted, that will be. That's why most of the time the major focal point will be like here or in the center. That's why like in Ion or many guns like that, we will have like some glass or like visor here, which supports the overall design. And again, our brain really easily read some lines and the correlation between them. For example, if this line goes up, for our brain it's pretty easy to read. We can find the point where they are going, and we can move to this point all the lines. For example, it will be here. So to support it, we can add more lines. That's how we found another part of the silhouette. And right now we can see the correlation between those lines. Next, I'm still thinking about the functionality of the gun, and every time when I'm working on that, I'm trying to keep the functional elements, because every time when we it tells us about usability and how people using the objects. Every time when we're designing something, we need to know, like our brain wants to know how we gonna use it. And some dials, buttons, they might help us to understand. You can switch it from one mod to another mod, or like you can push the button and something changed. That's why every time I'm just trying to keep the buttons, because they bring in a lot of personality and usability, which makes the weapon more believable. For the grip, we can pick the same direction as the original one, and we can repeat it later if we need. Like for example, this direction of the grip, maybe it will be on the front, and that will look a little bit better. I assume, yeah, it looks a little bit better on the front because it's one of the big shapes, and we can use it. But just to support that line, we need to create like another Thunderbolt. For example, on a different brands and different cars, they're using this approach. They're using it like they're always repeating the same elements. For example, that might be like a Bugatti. Bugatti, actually, they are using their logo and their grille design. It is a horseshoe, and because they're trying to tell a story, like it's a race car, and that's why their major silhouette and major logo, it is a horseshoe. And they're using the same approach for the side view. It's the same horseshoe. On a different generation, they're using the same approach. It's still horseshoe. That's why they're using that silhouette of the Falcon to their car, and you see that wings. They repeat it on the back of the car, and we can look at another example. Actually it's a Falcon right now with the folding wings. They're using this approach to explain like a small story which we will understand subconsciously. And for us, we can do kind of the same approach. We can use the Thunderbolt as the major silhouette, like a Thunderbolt on the grip. And right now, okay, I like the idea of the Thunderbolt on the grip, and I can do it. I can use the same approach for the direction of the Thunderbolt here, and that will be over here, for example. Plus we can continue this line on front, and we can support it with this silhouette line. We can chop this part and make it a person aligned with the original line. Or, by the way, we can pick another point and bring all lines to that point. That works as well. Just to find some cool idea. Oh, it works, by the way. I can use it. I can use it here. Yeah, it's pretty dynamical. It looks pretty cool for me. And let's use this line just as a copy here, just to create like extra dynamic. And plus, we can edit one line here. Yeah, it looks pretty aggressive already. So if we want to bring another thunderbolt, we need to find a place for that. That might be something like that, but maybe I can change the size of that and bring it here. You know, it looks good. We need to add a little bit more volume. Let's find a place for the thunderbolt here, and it shouldn't be like that obvious. We can cut it, for example, and leave only the bottom part of that, and just imagine it's already reads like a flow of that big things. So in this case we don't need the bottom part, but we can support it with the other design elements, like some structural elements, just some technical support here that might look like that, just to make the gun a little bit heavier, like less fragile, I would say. Why not, right? Why not to use the same silhouette of the thunderbolt here? That might be a part of that small grip here, and then we can figure it out later, make it like more cleaner. But right now, everything what we're doing, we're looking for a new design. We can create a place for belt right now, and that might be on the front, something like repeats this line maybe. And if you want to make it more aggressive, you can always like stick it out a little bit more, or again use the same line just to find the right correlation between the directions. Okay. We can use it here like as a small hook for the belt. It feels like there is not enough room for the bullets, but maybe this gun doesn't have any bullets. Maybe it is like a battery which contains like energy to generate thunderbolts inside. Our brain really loves the correlation between the lines. It's so easy to understand, and it creates like some kind of it makes like some prediction for our brain, which creates like the world a little bit more stable. And that's why I really love our brain really loves that approach in the different objects, and that's why we can use it all the time, because like we as the human beings, we really love something like that. It's like a perfect objects. For the trigger, I can use the same idea. It's still like Thunderbolt, because like we are shooting with the we're using Thunderbolt when we're shooting, and we are releasing that lightning all the time, every time when we pulling the trigger. We shouldn't like one-on-one copy that, but that might be pretty readable if we add some kind of weight here. You see like my real process. Every time when I'm doing like the first day is the most difficult day because you are trying to find like the idea, the correlation between the lines, and then it's like my warm-up. And after that, I understand like the theme a little bit better because it'll be much stronger in my mind, and then everything goes much faster. For example, like a first day, I can spend a full day only on the one sketch. But for the second day, I can make like 6 sketches because I already warm up, already know what I'm looking for, I already know what I want to do. That's why the first day is the most difficult day for all of us. It always takes like a lot of time just to make something like that. I started my career as a graphic designer. That experience gave me a lot when I changed my profession to the more weapon design, characters design, and illustrations, because it gives me really strong fundamentals, which help me to understand how to design the objects. Graphic design has like strong 13 rules, which are mostly based like on a contrast, balance, alignment, hierarchy. It's the fundamentals of the visual design, like proximity, scale and proportions, movement. All of these things, they help you out to make the images balanced and look good. It doesn't matter what is it. It's an object, it's a character, it's an illustration. All of these fundamentals, they are unified for everything. Right now, I'm just starting cleaning my design. And most of the time, I'm using like number 2 size brush. Like it's the most standard brush. I'm using like 3 the most standard brushes. I can switch in between them pretty quick and by the buttons, like hotkeys. And everything you need, it's just know your favorite brushes and just switching between them all the time. For the cleaning, I need to understand the silhouette because it's a little bit difficult to me when I'm drawing by lines. When I'm using line work for that, it's harder to understand the silhouette to me. That's why I'm using that not so often. But right now, I'm using it much more often. I used to use a different approach, which is good for characters and environments and illustrations when you're using shapes. Like when you're drawing with the big shapes instead of lines, because it helps you out to understand the silhouette much better. But here I can't use it because the major silhouette, we can't change the major silhouette too much. And that's why I'm using lines, because I'm working inside the silhouette. When I finish it, I will see the silhouette much better and start working on the correlation between the other lines. And that brings me much more clarity to the design because I will see it much better when I'm drawing and how it looks in the clean version. And I can work on the details, on some elements which are questionable for me. And right now the overall design already looks pretty solid, and we can make a split here. Why not? Just for more convenient, that might be split for the different materials. And for example, we can use like the straight line. Yeah, maybe here might look good. Yeah, I like it. Let's clean it up. And for example, that will be a rubber part or part which is much softer, just to help our shoulder not feeling pain every time when we touching when we're leaning to the stock. I can make some bands here just to as a part like of future animation. For example, for animation, it's great to have like some elements which will be moving in the future, because when you have like a static object, every only animation you can have, it's like a hand animation and like an animation for inspect or for reload. But for inspect, if we have like some more movement of objects, it will be much more satisfying and like much more interesting because we'll have the objects which are moving. Okay, I'm gonna draw a trigger which looks like a thunderbolt, and we just make a cutout here, that's all. The rest of the part might be a little bit more convenient for the finger, like this. It's still hard angle. Oh yeah, this one looks perfect. Yeah, it still looks like a Oh, we can support it from the different side. Yep, like a small hard angle here, and yeah, it looks much stronger, but still it is a thunderbolt. Yeah, we can read it. I need just to figure out the silencer. This is the last and maybe the hardest object, not the hardest to design object, because we need to integrate it into the rest of the design. Okay, it looks cool because it's pretty simple, and at the same time it should be a really readable object. We need to keep in mind we can't have a lot of details here because it's the front part of the gun, the most deformed by camera. That's why no one sees it correct. If you make like two objects like that, like two cutouts here, for example, on the 1P it will look like two lines because they will be like distorted by the point of view and the camera angle. So that's why we need to find like how to make it more interesting and at the same time supporting the overall design. Working on the skins for the game is a really important part because our game is pretty focused on the skills of the players. That's why players, they're spending a lot of time in the game just to achieve their goals. It always creates a lot of routine work, a lot of repetitions. And that's why we need skins, because it's like drinking coffee. You can make a coffee every day at home, but many people, they prefer going to the coffee shop or to cafe and drink the same coffee. But actually it's changing your routine. You're drinking the same beverage, but it's totally changing your routine with kind of the same result. It changes your attitude, and it's much easier to do the same things over and over again because it looks a little bit different and makes more fun and brings a lot of new things to your routine life. And we are trying to bring that excited products just to make your life more happy and more fun. We are on the colorizing step, and right now our cleanup looks like that. We need to clean up our silhouette. In the different softwares like Clip Studio, filling that silhouette will be much easier, but Clip Studio will work with the different features. Like it's not as powerful as Photoshop and the photo manipulations or like creating the VFXs or something like that. That's why I'm using the Photoshop most of the time. Plus, it's a little bit easy to sharing the documents. Plus, if you want to use like a different program, everything will be related with the Photoshop. That's why it's like an industry standard. But definitely I would love to draw a little bit more in the Clip Studio, because for artists it's a perfect tool, but not the best tool if you are doing more than just drawing. If you need to work with the photos or you're working like with the objects, you're designing something like for graphic design, it's almost impossible to use Clip Studio. That's silhouette of our gun. For the people who are just starting their career, I remember my mistakes in that I overcomplicated everything. I overthink all the time and try to make like as much as possible details just to show like, oh, you know, I can do this, I can do that. And actually the hardest part is make your art clean and simple. Clean and readable. As readable your art, as better your art. Do not draw like every small detail in your art. Try to find that way which will be the fastest one and the easiest one. That's why I would suggest make your art simple. Simple, clean, and readable. And find that way which helps you out to make it easy. Because as longer you work on your project, as quicker you will burn out. That's why your work should be simple for you at first. It should be quick and simple, or you will lose attention to your work pretty quick. Concept artists, they're representing their ideas. Ideas, it's number one. Number two, it's like how you are presenting your ideas. For me, making like a clean and really luxury look work, it's a really helpful, and always working for pitching my ideas to art directors. And right now we need to color. For the coloring, actually, we need to keep like a mostly 3 colors. We can use more colors than 3, but they should be in the same volume as the original colors. That's why at first I still keeping it like gray, because right now it's not distracting me by different color. And I'm just trying to find like the volumes where that big shapes will be. It's still the same rule like big, medium, smalls. You have like your silhouette, the overall design should be like in the main color, and then you will have like 2 supportive colors, like your mediums, and the smalls it's just highlights. And then in the right proportions it looks like 60-30-10. For the characters, like if you're working on the characters, that relation works a little bit different, because 60-30-10 tells about personality in an opposite way. As simpler, like as smaller objects on your character, as more they're telling about your personality of your character. As bigger, as less, because on the top we are wearing clothes, but details like pins and the other small elements, they tell about our personality much more than the like your hoodie or like the image on that hoodie, because like pins and small objects like decals are they telling about like what's going inside you than like what you want to show to everyone. That's why the small objects they're much more important than the bigger objects. Bigger objects, they're just telling the story of what you want to tell us, but not what you are hiding from us. That's why that's the biggest difference between the big, medium, smalls. Okay, we are filling the mediums right now. You know, it already looks pretty aggressive when we split it on that colors. And right now I need to highlight, because the highlight might change everything. I need to use highlights like our smalls, or let's say it's like not the smalls, but in these designs it's actually smalls. This highlights, it's the objects which will be always on the biggest contrast. Yeah, by the way, when we're talking about big, medium, smalls, it's not only about the proportions and size of the objects, but volumes. At the same time, the biggest and the big and smalls should be like the most contrast colors, because one of them it's like a canvas, another one it's like your actual painting. Right now this is a glass, and maybe the glass should be less contrasty, or like we can pick another color, like for example like a red, just to see everything we need on this stage. It's just clearly see the volumes, how much we're taking with the same color. We can use like different colors for that. It's not a big problem for this stage. The balance it is one of the crucial parts of the graphic design and like any design as well, because if you have incorrect balance, your proportions they will break. For example, we have the dark elements and pretty bright elements, and both of them, the volumes, they're pretty heavy, and it feels like it moves the whole composition right on that way, because it's like dark, but it's really dark element. That's why we need to bring something bright on the other side to create the balance between them, to have like the balance should be approximately in the center. It depends on what you planned, but in my plan it's just having a balance here. That's why front is a little bit more brighter, the back a little bit darker. And right now we need to bring some color. Maybe it'll be like a bright color. Highlights here will be like a gold, yeah, something like that. And for this color we can pick something like I don't know what is the color might be of the Zeus. Let's try the blue. Yeah, like this. So, and we need to find the right value. Yep, looks good. Every time when I'm working on the compositions, I'm worried about like major parts. First, it is like big, medium, smalls. It's a balance between the shapes, and the colors, and we need to find that balance at first. Then it's a balance. Balance creates the proportions between the relation between the front, back, between the elements. That balance creates the weight of that elements, and everything we need. Then usability and contrast. Right now I'm working on the contrast, because if the one object will be too contrasty, like let's use this one, it will be contrasted with the rest of the colors. It will be really hard to read your composition, because contrast might, it will be like too cluttered object, really hard to read. For example, if we're talking about the like letters and how we are reading like in the real life, we've got like A and B, two letters. Let's use black color. When the space between them is pretty close, it's really hard to read it. Like let's repeat it many times. It becomes some pattern. It's really hard to understand what is it. If we're using the distance like too high and like make it smaller just in case, and it's harder to read it again, because we can understand like the full word because the distance between them too high. The same thing we are doing with the design. We need to find the right space between the contrast objects, just to increase the readability of the silhouette and the overall design. And for example, like all of these three colors, like gloss elements, it's a gloss element. Plus we have a gold or like something like a brass, which is a pretty bright element as well, which might be shining. And white, they're all pretty close to each other. And that's why we still can't separate them, but feel them as the single object. And we have the most contrast, it's like blue. It's the highest contrast here. That's why that creates the contrast. Plus blue creates like some kind of frame for the rest of the objects, and that's why the image is not breaking on the different parts. We can feel it as the single object because we have some kind of frame and a lot of elements inside. We know the borders of our composition. That's why we need to take care about balance, color volumes, and and proportions. We need to finish what will be inside a glass, and that might be like something like a energy generator or something which will have a real lightning inside, and we can create that strange object which generating the electricity or some power inside. That might be on this stage, that might be a pretty abstract thing, because everything we need on this stage, like it's just explorations, just our idea, and then we can figure it out and find like what exactly will be inside. But on this stage, it's just representation of what potentially might be inside. It's like just representation of the room for this something, which we can create a little bit later. It looks like an object, and we can make some bright elements inside, like bullets, or it's like batteries in our case. And here we can create like some lightning which goes through some elements inside, and everything we need to just draw it. It should look like a lightning, and after that I will add some kind of glow just to make it look like the effects as like lightning, because it's not a static object. I'm zooming out a lot because I need to see like the object from the far distance to understand it's still readable. If I continue drawing on pretty close or like high zoom, I will be focusing too much on details, and that details might affect the overall design. That's why all the time I need to return to the far zoom. When I worked for the Prime, I did like not a model, but I drew the knife and I tried to model it correct, how that might be openings. Plus I did it like many times with the Prelude to Chaos. when the sword just slide forward and extends. Like I did it many times, and sometimes we're using like some VFXs for that, just to show it, like just the feeling of that. We are not professional like VFXers or animators. We don't need to make it like being professionals in that part, but we can just help them to inspire them by our drawings. Okay, this is the bottom, this is the top. It's already looks much better. And right now I need just to shading that. What's the colors will be on the materials. I prefer on the first stages to doing a little bit different approach, because it's slightly faster, but it's not correct, but it's enough to represent your idea. I'm just using the some adjustments, that's adjustment layer. I'm using like lightness and set it to the multiply mode, which makes everything a little bit darker. And sometimes that's enough. And right now I'm gonna draw on mask. I'm flip the mask to the black and start drawing the shadows, but shadows will be everywhere. And then I'm just starting with the parts which are kind of round the parts. Why I'm starting here? Because I'm gonna blur it out later. And you see, it's a pretty quick process, because right now I'm thinking only about how that will look like as a form. And by the way, we can use it in a little bit different way. We can put all of our layers to a group and clip it to the group, and it will work for the whole group. Right now I'm blurring the mask, and right now it looks like a rounder object. The major part which elevates your work, it's definitely shading and understanding the materials. Even when you look at the image, you can understand like how you're gonna hold this gun and how that might feel. That's why shading, it's a really important part in the artistic process. I'm gonna continue and just finishing the shadows. Then I'm gonna do the same with the highlights, and then we can figure out what we need to add or what we need to adjust or change. We can use the same approach just to create like some small dimensionality for this weapon. And right now I'm gonna draw some lightning. For the lighting, I'm just set the same hue and saturation, and then set it to the line dodge add. And right now everything I need, it's like make the lightness lower. Why am I use the linear dodge? Because it's kind of oversaturate and like bring the colors brighter and more saturated. And everything I need, it's just draw by this highlight. We are trying to not radically changing this the gun, because we have like a lot of limitation. It shouldn't take like a lot of room on your screen on the 1P, because it shouldn't distract you too much from the gameplay, because it's a high competitive video game. Your skills means a lot, and you shouldn't pay for the disadvantage. We are taking care about you, our players, just to bring you the great tool for your game, but at the same time that tool shouldn't distract you from the gameplay, because the gameplay is the major part of the game. Art, it's like when you're drawing, it's like you go into a gym. If you decide to miss your gym today, it doesn't mean you become stronger today. It becomes like, because you lost one day, someone worked out that day, and that person becomes a champion, but you prefer doing something different. That's why for me personally, for the person who spent half of his life in different types of sports, I know there is no difference between art and sport. It's the same physical activity. You're teaching your body how to do something, because your brain might generate a lot of ideas, but you don't have a tool which might realize your ideas to the life. That's why it relates with the game, with the art, with everything what we are doing. If we are doing something constantly, we are achieving our goals. But that path might be fun and easy, or that might be hard because it's like inconvenient and you don't like what you're doing. That's why we are thinking about like how to make a product which will be really easy to play and you will love it. And again, for me, like as a person who is drawing for whole life and like mostly like doing like different types of sports, it's these relations absolutely like visible. I can see that in all my actions and everything what I'm doing in the company, in the game, and in my life. Actually, as you see, like it's already looks so readable. It's pretty close to the final, and everything I need is just working on the some small details just to bring it to make the gun a little bit more believable. And the last thing that I want to do, it is like some patterning, and I'm using like some brushes which I created before like many years ago, and just to show like that thing might have like some pattern, just to grip it a little bit better. Yeah, looks cool. Let's change the color, and the rest of will be darker. And we can change the color, for example, on the blue, and we created a pattern, and maybe that pattern will be like less. Yeah, looks cool. It's kind of supported the yeah, I love it. It looks much more interesting than I expected. What I'm looking for here right now, it's not that the f-axis or it should look cool. It should be readable. This is the major part for me, especially maybe as a graphic designer. I need to clearly read that object, and I need to clearly read it on the ground. This is the major part for me, and for the players as well, because if you can understand what you're picking on the ground, that might be huge disadvantage for you, because you expected to see like a Phantom, but it turns out it's Guardian. Because they're pretty close. Sometimes they're really close, or like Phantom and Vandal. Sometimes they might be close, especially like if you see like only the top of the gun and don't see like the part of the box just over hiding the part of the gun. But you want to pick it up, and you need to understand like pretty quick what's the gun is it, but you don't see the magazine, and because it's hidden by like box or something like that, and it's like right on the corner of the box, and you wanted to pick it up, and you don't know what's the gun, and you need to make a decision. Do you want to pick it or not? And it should be so quick. You need to feel it. That's why I'm just trying to focusing on the silhouette. It should be readable and easy to see like what's the gun is. The next step of my work, like for example, we are finishing this one. I can like experimenting a little bit more with the colors, like just for fun, but it doesn't work for the art directors, because color difference doesn't bring you like any difference. It's not affects on the design and the silhouette, which is the major part of the gun. Colors absolutely subjective, and some people love the blue color. Some people said like red is better. Let's try our red, and that might be the last step when we're finishing that gun, because we can play with the colors like a whole day, and we can pick something right for us, because like each of us might have a different opinion. That's why I'm not leaning to the colors too much, and more leaning to the silhouette, because it's the most important part. You see, like even this one looks already different, but it's because we changed the balance of the balance of the gun. We have like too many yellows, which change the volumes a lot, and that guns feels different right now. And actually, we like for the chromas, we're spending like different time just to find the right color for the gun. Like 2 different options, but actually it's the same gun. We just change the colors. We can use the quick test just to show it's the same gun. You see, it's absolutely the same, but our subjective feeling of the colors might make it like totally different. Let's try to for another one, just for fun, because it has a different color balance. Oh yeah, it's something like it's a toys water blasters. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this design. It looks great. I really love the correlation between lines and the balance of the volumes. It's a really good and strong first concept. Like if I have more time or if I work in my regular day, I would definitely add like some animations. Definitely much more different options. It's option number 1 for me. This is work when I just warm up on that thematic. The next one will be much faster. I'm pretty excited what I got, and it's pretty quick. I think the process might help you out to understand what I'm doing, how I'm doing, and if it fits for you, you can try to use the same approach. I just want to repeat that you wouldn't see this in the game. It's a just representation of our process. All of this process, it's just generating ideas. Sometimes I have like so many crazy ideas. It is the hardest part and the funnest part for me. I really love that process and I want to do it every day. Thank you to join us to Super Art Power Hour, and I hope you could learn something new. I hope I could show you something new. Stay tuned and like waiting for a new episode. Thank you everyone. Power up.
On that note.